when you talk about Bal Teshuva, we're a generation of Bal Teshuva. That's my feeling. We're a generation of Bal Teshuva. Whether you were born in this home or that home, we all struggle. Some of us struggle with Aveda, some of us struggle with mood, some of us struggle with motivation. We all struggle, and we do our best. We try our best, do our best. Whatever that is. So I from time to time, I'll tell you this. I didn't see a lot of Eltei Chassidim. I wasn't zeicher to see a lot of Eltei Chassidim. I was born too late, and I was also too stupid. Because if I had zeicher, I was alive when Rabbi Shmuel was alive, when Rabbi Simpson was alive, when Rabbi Jacobson was alive. I didn't see him. My brother, who's younger than me, saw them all. He paid attention. I was out to lunch. I was in dreamland. I'm still in dreamland for those who know me. But don't tell anybody. But the Mendel I saw, the Mendel Futterfass. I sat at his Fabrengens. And the Mendel was a deep man who was he was the best Fabrengen I ever saw. You couldn't leave his Fabrengen. You could not leave. He was so engaging. But the Mendel has two tshuva stories that are very different. The two tshuva stories. And he would tell them both. Not necessarily at the same time, but the Mendel's Fabrengens were they were an experience. He walked into a room and he sized it up. He found the carbon, he found one guy, and the Fabrengen, that poor guy had to drink until he was in a stupor, and most people didn't go out a whole night. The Mendel was a very interesting person, and he engaged. He didn't talk, he talked to us. He talked to somebody. He found a way of making the Fabrengen very personal. So the Fabrengens went where the audience was. I think that's a good way of describing what made him so unique. But so he had different stories. The Mendel had unashamed maises, the Mendel. So the Mendel had two stories of tshuva that I sort of related to, and they're very, very different. The first story was a whole drama. The Mendel could tell a story for 4 hours, and you wait for it to finish. Wow! And he went off on tangents like I'm doing right now. It drove you mad. You waited and you waited and you waited. I remember being 3-4 in the morning on a Thursday night. He started the Fabrengen 10 o'clock in the evening with a story. He hadn't finished it. And then hours, oh, by the way, in the middle of a story, I wanted to leave when he finished that story. He never finished it. But he started with a story and he's off to the races. So this was one of the Mendel's maises. But there's the two Chassidim with the Alter Rebbe. But they had different journeys. When they were younger lights, when they were young men, they learned together. You're talking about a time that when people learned Torah their whole life, they did nothing but learn Torah, mamish. And they were Yereim Shleimim. The level of Yerushalayim, the level of Avodas Hashem was very, very high. I'm talking about non-Chassidim, I'm talking about Misnagdim. In other words, if people couldn't understand why you need a Chassidus, in the generation of the Alter Rebbe, it actually was a good question. Because not only learn Torah day and night, they learned Kabbalah, they learned Pnimis Torah. After the Alter Rebbe, in hindsight, you saw why it was so necessary. But these two young alike both ended up at the Alter Rebbe. But they went different journeys. One at a very young age somehow found Chassidus Chabad and he came Chassid of the Alter Rebbe. The other one did it much later in life. So these two men met and they were Fabrengen. So the first one says to the second one, my journey was straight. Your journey was clearly circuitous until you ended up in the same place. Tell me your journey. Tell me your story. So he told him, my journey can be summarized by the 4 definitions of the word Ashamnu. Every day when we say Tachnun, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, I sinned, and I lied, and I cheated, and I spoke foolishness, right? Ashamnu, Bagadnu. Every day we say after Shmoneh, confession. It's a miracle we don't know Hebrew, because if we knew Hebrew, we'll give an Achanaveh, yeah? We read all these words, I sinned, and I sinned, and I sinned. We hit our chest. You're on your cell phone listening to a conversation so you don't hear the Yidra Veda, so it's not so hard to get through. If you pay attention, it becomes like Yom Kippur, it's not so gishmak. But you say one sin for every us of the alabase. When you get to tough, right, we say Shichasnu, Tiyavnu, Titono. So you have more than one tough. Anyway, so he says, when I was a young man, I would say this every day. And I would say to myself, I'm a tzaddik. I know I'm a tzaddik. So why am I confessing for sin? I never sinned in my life. So I decided that I'm confessing because the guy next to me sinned. The guy next to me sinned. I have no reason to say this. The person next to me did Navera. saying a shamnus, he shouldn't feel bad, as the only one confessing. Then he says, life went on, and I realized that I was being very arrogant to assume that I'm the only tzaddik. Maybe everybody's a tzaddik. And the Sashal means nobody sinned, not me, not the guy next to me. But as life progressed, I started learning Sifrei Musar, maybe I started learning even Chassidus, and I came to the conclusion that I'm not such a big tzaddik. You know, the story with Shmuel Munkis, I'm not such a big tzaddik. In fact, there are things in my life that I'm ashamed of. There are things in my life that I do that are wrong that I don't want anybody to know. But I came to a very, very disturbing conclusion. And the conclusion is that in all likelihood, I'll do it again. So you have to hear the Mendel telling the story. He's a wonderful storyteller. He would bang on the table with the tips of his fingers. Ich hab gesündigt und ich will sündigen weiter. I admit that Hashem doesn't mean the other guy sinned. Hashem doesn't mean nobody sinned. Hashem means I sinned. But I'm sorry to say to you, God, Hashem is Baruch, when I'm talking to, when I daven, it'll probably happen again. I don't want it to happen again. I'm not happy about the fact, but I got to be honest. Hashem, because then I came to Alter Rebbe, he said, I learned Chassidus, I got a tshuva, and I learned Hashem, the Mendel would bang at the table, Ich hab gesündigt und ich will mehr nicht sündigen. I sinned and I will not repeat it. In other words, the Alter Rebbe taught the power of the Bal Teshuva is that you don't have to repeat it. The person can become a Bal Bayis over himself. Even a bad habit that the person has for years and years and years and years, a person has the ability to gain mastery over self, and hanhaga loy toiva, negative aspect of his behavior, which he has for many, many years, you can stop it. So the Mendel would tell this story. These are the 4 levels of Hashamnu. And his point was the true meaning of a Bal Teshuva is not someone who regrets his actions, it's one who changes his actions.